Thank you for listening to the BJJ Brick Podcast. We'll be bringing you Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and good times. We hope to flatten your Jiu-Jitsu learning curve, help you get the most out of your grappling ability, and meet your goals both on and off the mat.
Welcome back, my friends, to the BJJ Brick Podcast. This week on episode 267, our special guest is Joel Bouhey. I am here with my partners in crime. Some people call them Starsky and Hutch, Byron Jabara and Joe Thomas. How are you guys doing?
I'm doing good, Gary. How are you?
I am fabulous. How about you, Byron?
I'm doing great, guys. It's always great to exchange some pleasantries with you at the beginning of the show. Doing great.
I'm glad you're doing great.
Excited to bring Joel Bouhey on the show. He plays a little bit different game, and he does have a DVD that's coming out, or that's out by now, and it kind of details a guard he plays. He calls it the Falcon Guard. Pretty neat. I've been toying around with it a little bit since I interviewed him, and it's definitely interesting. It throws it's been throwing a few of my teammates for kind of a loop. So we'll be talking to Joel here in a little bit, and he'll give us more details on that when we do.
Byron, you just talked about throwing some of your teammates for a loop. And, the first thing I thought of, you were talking about a loop, was a hula hoop. Basically, check out Byron's audio book, 6 Games for BJJ. And there is actually no hula hoops in there. But, Byron, I think a hula hoop could be good for hip movement. So that might be something you want to think about. But definitely check out this audio book. We have a link to it on the show notes. And it's kind of for, would you say, blue belts and above, Byron?
Yeah, it's kind of, it's not your fundamental book. It's designed to help you develop your game and find the uniqueness in that. And so, yeah, blue belt be fantastic. Anywhere above is not going to have any trouble with it. There's probably some white belts that would enjoy the playfulness of it, but really, I guess is kind of aimed at blue belt and up. That's a good way to say it, Gary.
Yeah, and I can tell you, Joe and I have used some of your games there, all the time, and it's definitely helped my game, and I know Joe has had great success with it also. So definitely check it out. It's definitely going to help your game, get you better, and just have some fun.
Yeah,
I think the hula hoop guard might be the next big thing, Gary.
Yeah,
onto something.
Yeah, I mean, I might have to start my own audiobook, one hula hoop game for BJJ. So have to check it out.
Yeah, he does that hula hoop style when he's trying to pass the guard.
It doesn't work too good.
No.
But, you think about it, though. When we were little, there was always a hula hoop sometime. I know Joe actually got really good at it and has been on stage numerous times, but with a lack of clothing. But, you think about it, something is a hula hoop is when we were young, you didn't think much of it. But now we started doing jiu-jitsu, and that was the first thing when hula hoop popped into my head. I was like, hey, that's probably good for your hip movement. Maybe that's a good way to warm up and get my hips loose and, get the synovial fluid flying and keep me from getting injured. Who knows?
Who knows? Clothing optional.
Remind me not to roll with Joe.
Nobody wants to see me hula hoop naked, Gary. I can guarantee you that.
Well, you did have a good career. I mean, I know you traveled around different cities there for 2 or 3 years, but I know that was when you were younger. So I can see that you've kind of fallen off the wagon.
Yeah, age has caught up with me.
And also, time has not been kind. Oh, man. Speaking about time, we can jump into the quote of the week here. Sooner or later, that's how the quote starts. Sooner or later, those who win are those who think they can. And it's by Paul Tournier. How do you say the last name, Gary?
Tournier?
Tournier?
I guess
it's got some sort of French, and it's like Tournier.
We'll go with that.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, the idea. Those who win are those who think that they can win. I guess it's not a requirement to think that you could win to actually win, but it does help. Helps a lot. I definitely have seen some matches, even a few today, where somebody had a submission and it looked pretty good, but they just didn't quite finish it. Maybe that they didn't think that they could finish it. Like a little bit of that confidence. Like if you lock up a submission, and let's just say it's your BJJ break, it's one of your best moves. You know it's going to work. Knowing that it's going to work, I think helps you somewhat to finish it. Versus like you have that little bit of doubt in your head, oh, this might work. I don't know. Usually guys escape this. I think you're a little less secure with it. You're a little less tight with it. Having that confidence that you could win and it's within your grasp. I think it's important.
You know, Byron, you say that, and I was just thinking of a football game I watched a couple days ago, and it'll be a couple weeks ago by the time this airs. But the Cleveland Browns won their first game in a long time, and they were down 14-3 at halftime. They were getting smoked in the first half. They have been playing much better this year. Going into this game, they were 0-1-1, and they switched quarterbacks right before halftime, and right off the bat, Baker Mayfield drove them down for a field goal, so they're only down 14-3 at half. But as I started watching that second half, you could just see, after the first drive, they moved down, got another field goal, made it 14-6. But I saw the team that's, lost, I think they said it was like 600 days since their last win. And I could just see that confidence growing in that team. And like you were saying, Byron, those who win think they can. And as I was watching, I was like, man, they're going to win this game. They just had so much confidence out there on the field. And it was nice to watch them win. But that was the one thing I was thinking about as I was watching it. I was like, man, those guys, they are so fired up right now. They feel like they can win. They know they're going to win. And you could just see it, the air of confidence they had. And it ended up perfect for them.
Yeah, I'm sure I'm not the only one who heard their mother say, whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, you're right. Mindset has a lot to do with how much success we have in life, for sure.
I thought that was Yoda that said that.
It could have been. Maybe my mom ripped off Yoda.
I don't remember who told it to me, but it was a long time ago, and it's something I've always kept into my head. But they always told me, you can only do what your mind can do. And basically what they were telling me is if you don't think you can do it, kind of like this one, you're not going to do it. You have to think that you're going to do it. You have to have it in your mind. If you start saying, I can't, basically everything's ruined. You need to hear I can. And, you have to have your mind in it before, it's going to come to fruition.
Yep, that's good stuff. So thanks, Paul Tournier, for the quote for this week. And let's segue right into our life lesson, where we take a lesson maybe one of us has learned in life, and we pull it onto the mat and see how it relates to jiu-jitsu. So I'll bring it this week, guys. You know that I work for a company that provides transportation for supplies and equipment to the offshore oil industry worldwide, but I'm currently working in the Gulf of Mexico, and the company was founded in 1956, and back then it was basically just converted shrimp boats and tugboats that would take the supplies out. And in the 60s, early 70s, they started custom building boats for this job. And originally they were just twin screw boats. They had two props in the stern, and they each spun in opposite directions, and there was a rudder between each prop or behind each prop, and you could put one in forward and one in reverse and turn the rudders one direction or the other, and you could make the boat kind of move laterally one direction or the other, or hold in a side current underneath the platform so that the crane operator could offload the cargo. And it was really a mechanical technology. It was pretty easy for guys to grasp, pretty easy to understand. Guys got good at it. In the 70s, they added a bow thruster up in the bow, which is a prop that just pushes water port or starboard and helps you counter the current. It's still pretty easy to understand and easy to work with technology. But in the late 80s and 90s, they started moving away from the props in the stern that would go in forward and reverse with the rudder behind, and they went to what we call an azimuth drive, which is a rudder, or it's a prop on a pod that spins 360 degrees. It's no forward and reverse. The wheel's always turning the same direction. And then we added a dynamic positioning system, which is a computer-based system that interfaces with satellite GPS, and the satellite tells you this is where you want to be, and then the computer controls the bow thruster and controls the stern thrusters and holds the boat in position. It works in with a gyro compass as well to maintain the same heading. And it might sound complicated, but it's actually pretty simple at that point. And so guys had to go through some training and kind of retool their skill set a little bit to run these boats. And there were some guys that said, you know, I'm happy working on the stick and rudder boats. I'm just going to stay here. I'm not going to go on the new boat and learn the new technology. And the new technology started to get even more complex. Originally, they just communicated with the GPS satellite, and then they put reflectors on the platform and a laser on the boat, and the laser would shoot to the platform, and then the reflection would come back and it would tell the boat to maintain this range and bearing from the platform, plus the GPS satellites interfaced with it. And then they started having underwater acoustics, and then they started having two bow thrusters, and it got more and more complex. And at the same time, more and more of these boats were being built, and the old boats were gradually being mothballed. And there was a few guys that they were just happy with that old technology. And we're currently in a downturn a little bit in the oil industry. And in 2015, it was the bottom of the downturn. And most of those old boats ended up getting stacked. And most of those captains that had not grown with the technology ended up being forced into retirement. Some of them 5 years, some of them 10, 15 years before they really wanted to retire. And so if you kind of drag this onto the mat, the jiu-jitsu landscape is going to change over time. Your body's going to change over time. You're going to get older. Maybe you're going to get an injury that requires you to change your game. And if you resist the change, eventually jiu-jitsu is going to move on without you. And probably the most interesting thing that I'd like to bring as far as this life lesson is, there was a point where these old school guys could have taken a month or two to learn the technology when it was in its infancy and then grown with it. And the longer they waited to learn the new technology, the harder that transition would be. And I would liken that to a guy who, as a white belt, finds that he has some success with a wrestling style, you know, a top game, a pressure, takedown, and his bottom game consists of, I just explode and I force a scramble and then I come out on top. And that probably works as a white belt. And then as a blue belt, it might work a little bit too, but eventually you start running into guys who are better at that game than you, and they end up putting on your back and keeping you there. And you're just explode and come out on top doesn't work anymore. And at that point, you have two options. You can either start to develop a bottom game, or you can go all in with your A game and just explode. And you can just, I'm going to get better at takedowns. I'm going to get better at scrambles. I'm going to get better at bench pressing people off myself. And that might get you from blue to purple belt. But eventually you're going to have to fill those holes in your games. You're going to have to retool. You're going to have to adjust. And the longer you wait, the harder that is. So if you're in that position where you're really good at one thing and there's a big hole in your game, the sooner you address it, the easier it's going to be.
Joe, that was awesome. And for all you listeners here, you know, it kind of reminds me of a post Joe just put on our Facebook page. So, you know, as you hear this, go check out, you know, BJJ Brick on Facebook. But Joe, you just came back from vacation from Reno, Nevada, and you posted a life lesson, I guess, kind of like this. And you were talking about how Reno didn't change with the times, and now it's, you know, not the city it used to be. And you know, that goes kind of with what you're saying right there. And I started thinking about my own game when I first started, and I was a top player. And, you know, one person who really helped me with my game when I first started was Byron here. And Byron would offer advice to me all the time. And just, you know, sometimes I didn't realize where that advice was coming from, or, you know, I was too new and I didn't totally understand it. But I remember Byron would say, you need to work on positions and you need to work on your bottom game. You know, your top game will take you to this point, but you need to switch. And I remember what I was doing is I'd work on it for like 2 or 3 days, 2 or 3 practices, and then I would switch. And Byron's like, Gary, that's not enough to get familiar with it. He's like, you probably want to take, a couple weeks. And, so I took a couple weeks and I saw some progress. I took a couple more weeks, saw more progress. And, I turned it into like a year-long thing. I just started, I guess I wasn't working guard at that point, but I would start every one of my rounds the other person in my side control, and I would have to escape or I would just spend 5 miserable minutes in side mount, and it definitely helped my game and made me see how much better you can get when you're trying to evolve.
Yeah, and it's a lot easier to do that when you're white belt or early blue belt than to wait until you're a mid-level purple belt, and then you have to start putting yourself in positions where you're getting dominated by lower belts. And I mean, we try to conquer the ego, but we all still have to deal with it. And it's easier to make these adjustments earlier in your game than later, I think.
Yeah. You're right about that. And I just think, and at that point, Byron was probably a white belt, maybe a blue belt. And Byron's giving me this advice. And, Byron's not as knowledgeable then as he was today. But, I'm kind of glad I followed that advice. It just seems like we didn't have a lot of upper belts when we started. And, when we talk about all this time, you can learn from anybody. And it was just good advice I received. And I know we've talked about not just receiving advice and giving advice, but you have to keep your ears open. You have to listen to that person and really try it out. And, it did wonders for me.
Making me blush, Gary.
Oh, I thought that was, like Joe was talking about earlier, some guys were happy with the stick and rudder, and it made me think of you. You always tell me you're happy with the stick. But, the other part of this, Joe, is I know you talked about it started with, like a shrimp boat and, how big, the company's grown and everything. And it's just awesome to see Bubba Gump shrimp boats, grow to that big of a company. Congratulations.
Bubba Gump, baby.
Joe, I got you here. List 3 kinds of shrimp.
There's fried shrimp, there's boiled shrimp, there's sauteed
there
shrimp.
You go. You got the 3 minimum.
Yeah.
A lot of times.
Speaking of shrimp, I watched you helping somebody, Byron, here maybe 3 weeks ago or something, and it was kind of cool because I have stole it from Byron. But when we shrimp, we can shrimp a little bit or we can shrimp a lot. And Byron, I don't know what technique you were showing somebody, but it just made sense, and it's something I've stole from you. But you were telling somebody they weren't shrimping enough. You were telling them to shrimp, they weren't getting enough distance, getting their hips where they needed to be. And you're like, no, we don't need a popcorn shrimp, we need a jumbo shrimp. And I just thought that was awesome. So now I tell people if they need to do a large shrimp, I call it a jumbo shrimp. A smaller shrimp, just a little popcorn shrimp, that'll help you out. But another thing I stole from you, Byron.
Well, have them, if they don't shrimp, if they shrimp once, then they probably should shrimp 2 or 3 times, tell them to go to the shrimp buffet. I've got a whole series of shrimp jokes and things to help people remember how to shrimp properly.
Well, the great thing is I love the title of that book, Shrimping Ain't Easy.
But it is important. Another thing that we have important here is our interview with Joel Bouhey. Here we go. He is the most interesting grappler in the world.
If you catch him in an armbar, don't forget to pry open his fist after he taps. There will be a small piece of paper with your fortune on it, and it's always correct. When he was a white belt, he put a small amount of glitter on his belt, and then went on a world tour. If you look closely at your gi, you will probably find a few specks of glitter. He got you too, my friend.
I don't always listen to podcasts, but when I do, I prefer the BJJ Brick podcast. Stay sweaty, my friends.
All right, my friends, I'm happy to bring Joel Bouhey to the BJJ Brick podcast. Joel, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, man. The weather's good out here in Maui, so everything is good.
That's good. Yeah, excited to have you here. You got a lot of different things going on, and we have a couple different topics that I'm excited to get on the table here. But Joel, if somebody's not familiar with you, or maybe we haven't been to Maui yet and trained with you, give us a little description about who you are and what you're up to.
Okay, yeah. So my name is Joel. I live out here in Maui. I'm a black belt under Luis Heredia. His nickname is Limao. A lot of people know him as Hickson's right-hand man from back in the day. And yeah, basically, I was born and raised in Oregon, and I started jiu-jitsu in Oregon under a Megaton Diaz school. And after training for about 5 years, I met a girl, and the girl was from Maui. So after becoming very connected with this girl, who is now my wife, I ended up moving back to Maui with her. Her father had a stroke, and we went back to take care of her father, so I got it in my head. I was a blue belt, I trained for 5 years. I just got my blue belt. And I got it in my head that when I moved out to Hawaii, I was going to train, and I was going to get my black belt in Hawaii. And I was really going to try to become the best I can be. And basically that's what I did. I set that goal. I got away from a lot of, just bullshit that goes on in my hometown. And I was able to separate myself from that, moved to the island with this girl I was in love with, and became a black belt under, one of the most famous black belts that Rickson Gracie has ever produced. And it's crazy because I used to look at this book called The Gracie Way. Have you ever heard of that book?
Yes.
Yeah. So, the listeners, it's that one with Hoyler on the front and right after the Sakuraba fight. It's a great book. It kind of entails everything about each Gracie. So if you go to the Rickson Gracie portion, they have a small article on Limao, and it's just like a picture of him mad dogging the camera. He looks super scary. And I just remember thinking, that guy would be the scariest teacher ever to have. Seems like he'd be yelling the whole time. And he ended up being my teacher. And he's like one of the nicest guys. It was just a coincidence, So I moved to Maui. I trained day in, day out for a long chunk of time. It took me 12 years total, including the 5 years in Oregon. It took me 12 years total to get my black belt. And that's training as much as possible, competing, training, helping the academy. I got my black belt in 2012. And, up until that point, I competed as much as I could on the island, of course, a bunch on the island, but not too much off the island, And once I got my black belt, I continued to teach full time. I quit my other job. I made jiu-jitsu a 100% commitment to jiu-jitsu, and I started competing in some bigger tournaments like the Metamoris Challenger, and I competed at the Marianas Open in 2016 in Guam. A few bigger tournaments, so I got my name out there a little bit, but I feel like I'm mostly known for just being the guy in Maui to go train with,
Yeah, it's never been to Maui yet. But definitely would be interested in swinging by if that's
the whole that's the whole thing is everybody is down to come to Maui, right? So it's not like it's like a vacation place. So everybody who does jiu-jitsu, at some point they go to Hawaii or they're down to go to Hawaii. And when they make it there, everybody wants to get 1 or 2 days in training on vacation. So, every month there'll be somebody on vacation training at the gym that I'm meeting and connecting with. And, after years of that, I start to make a little name for myself just by being the guy that people go on vacation and train with,
Yeah, it's good for you to get diverse people coming in and train with a different skill sets that trickle through. Yeah, definitely. And Hawaii's big with the grappling culture and the fighting culture, and the jiu-jitsu and judo is big. They got judo in the school systems here. Me and my instructor and my partner, another black belt, we are the first ones to become part of this regular school program. So there's a school here called Kamehameha. It's one of the biggest schools in Hawaii. And we teach a jiu-jitsu after school program there that they pay us for. And it's we had to get tested, like FBI testing, and go through this huge process. And it's like a legitimate part of the school. They bought mats, they flew mats here. And it's the first one in Hawaii where they can offer that. So they're big into,
fighting and martial arts. The guy who ran the whole program is like a Helson Gracie purple belt. So, MMA has been legal here forever, and it's very accepted, so there's a lot of people to train with, and everybody's into it.
Cool. You talked about when you got your black belt, you decided to do this full time. What was that transition like, and how did you make that work?
Well, it basically, it went like this. I had a job, and what was I doing? I was lifting furniture into a truck and then moving it with a guy. We'd drive it to the person's place and unload it. And then, furniture warehouse style stuff. So what I would do is I would train every day, but I could only train once a day. And it would be at 6:00 p.m. I would get off work at 5. I would go up the mountain at the time, which is about a 40-minute drive from my job. And I would shower as quick as I can. And I would show up to class in the middle of the warm-up. I would get there late every time, but I would go every night, and it was very hard to get off work and not just stay home, because you're so tired. But I made that commitment, and then the day that I quit, doing that job, I moved to another job, and it was a little bit more in the sports field. It was at a gymnastics facility where I was, helping the gymnastics students do a strength program, and I was, involved with the gym there. So I did that, but it was still taking away from my jiu-jitsu. About 4 years later, I had my first daughter, and I just realized that if I'm going to do this, I got to do it now and make it work. So I jumped off of the gymnastics thing, got a full-time, gig working for Luis, as far as like every week I would have classes that I could teach. He paid me for it. I had 3 or 4 private students, that really helped me get through the first few months. That turned into 6 or 7. Before you know it, I'm teaching full time with, and I'm making enough to support myself. And all I could think to myself was, fuck, man, I wish I would have done that 3 or 4 years ago. It seems scary to jump into it, but once I did it, I made it work. And now I'm in, I've been doing it full time, since 2011. And, it's good. Everything, every day is a blessing. I get up and I drink coffee. I take my daughter to school, and I go right to the mat. I'm in the mat for 2 or 3 hours. I come home, pick up my daughter from school, teach privates, take my daughter to her class, stay if I want to train extra. I can go to Luis's class, and everything seems to be working out perfect, right now.
Yeah, that sounds good, Joel. How do you balance the scale as far as how much you teach and that sort of thing versus how much you're training yourself and developing your own style?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because the truth is I'm probably overdoing it. I had an injury for a while that was definitely caused from just like overdoing a certain kind of jiu-jitsu. I was like using the rubber guard on my left leg over and over and over, and that kind of took me out. I got so hurt that all I could do was teach, and even then I was in a lot of pain. So I think I'm doing it too much, but I can't stop. I'm obsessed with it. It's my job. And then I keep thinking about competitions, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. I think that's just, the case for a lot of teachers is every class, like even today before the podcast, I just taught 2 classes, and I had like a little bit of a sore neck from the day before. And I'm like, I'm not going to roll today. We're going to work on some leg locks, stay away from the neck, and I'm going to let everyone roll and watch. And then with the first roll, somebody asked me to roll, and I had to do it. I can't even help it. I've been doing that for, 17 years. I've been trying to tell myself to maybe take a couple of days off, but I kind of have an addictive personality, so as long as it's something as good as jiu-jitsu, it's okay, but I think the way to do it is have a day off here or there where you completely rest the body. Don't do jiu-jitsu, relax as much as you can if your job can allow you to do that, and recover, once or twice a week if you're training hard.
Yeah. Joel, I'm the same way. If I'm there, it's hard for me to take off a round and not roll, or even like, if I'm a little banged up, to not roll at all. Those are things that it's just difficult to be there and not be doing that. But I've learned a little trick that's helped me is I realize that there's value in watching the people roll, because we're guys that roll almost every time we're there. So we know who we're rolling with, and we're able to watch a little bit as far as the room and how people are doing and that sort of thing. But it's kind of hard. But when you step out and you watch the whole thing, I saw a couple of students who I thought were really fun people to train with, and they were just annihilating these white belts. I'm like, okay, man, you need to back off a little bit. Like I would have never guessed that would be happening, and it probably has been happening for years.
That happens, man. It happens. It's hard for me to gauge where beginners are too sometimes. Like I'm just like, are they good? I'm like, you're just so much above them, and then you're rolling, and you're kind of like they're strong, so you're giving it to them a little bit, and you can't tell how good they really are when they're going with other people their level, right?
Yeah.
It's hard, and it's been so long since we've been at that white belt level. We're so far above it that when we, the real feeling of being nervous and not knowing what position is and not knowing how to get out of side control, like it's hard to re-emulate that. You know what I mean? It's hard to remember how that felt.
Yeah.
Because we just tell the person, calm down, be careful, relax, breathe, all that stuff. But you forget how you felt when people told you that, which was, very panicky and what is this guy talking about? Relax. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's funny, but I think if you can, I train a lot, like not a lot, but I work with Heat on Gracie as much as I can. So I'm proud to call him a friend, a good friend. So when I work with him and every time I'm around him, I know that this guy trains all the time. You know what I mean? Like he teaches class after class after class after class, and he does get in there and roll. And he finds a way for him to be laying down, relaxing, and letting the other guy doing a lot. And he doesn't need to tap the guy all the time. So he could be getting dominated, and his focus is to stay safe, literally in every aspect, like his neck and his arms, not just safe from submissions, just like his body's safe, but somehow he's still rolling, and this will allow him to stay on the mat. So this is one thing I've tried to copy, being around him. I'm always like trying to pick up as much information as I can and emulate it as much as I can. And that's one thing, but it's funny if somebody just gives you that little extra shoulder in the face or something, you can immediately switch gears into turning it up.
Yeah.
So it's hard to do.
Yeah, that's funny. Talking about like turning it up, or maybe somebody's a little bit rough. You do train quite a bit with guys that do MMA. How's that training?
Yeah.
Obviously the training is different, but tell me a little bit about your experience in developing MMA athletes.
Well, first of all the guys that train, all the guys that are from Hawaii anyways, that train, they're naturally grew up thinking about punches. So, you know what I mean? It's a very, there's a lot of fights. People fight, they fight it out here, and pretty much everybody grew up fighting, on the streets or scrapping, they call it. So even the guys that come in for first classes that are tough athletes, they're naturally posturing and presenting an energy and everything like they would punch, or something like that. So it's very good to just think about it. You know what I mean? So like whatever guard you're working on can the guy hit you? Like if you hang out in deep half, you can get your face hit. Both your arms are committed to the guy's leg. You got your head on the inside. And I know you need to move to the waiter sweep or move under or whatever real quick, but there's certain guards that will work really good for sweeps. The leverage will work really well if there's no punches. You know what I mean? So it's a trip. And if you have to train it with somebody who knows a little jiu-jitsu too. When I work with Kendall, he's a black belt. He knows my game. He's way heavier and way taller. You know what I mean? So and then he's not wearing the gi and he's focused on punching me. Now he's not focused on, we don't roll like that all the time. You know what I mean? But we do roll like that. And even then he's not trying to hurt me. He's not giving it to me 100, even though maybe a couple times he has, but it's completely different. I'll start doing techniques to save my ass and save my face. And I don't even really practice those techniques. So I'll film it or I'll think back and I'm like, man, I ended up rolling with Kendall, and every time he was in my guard punching me, I just kept defaulting to having double underhooks with my head under his jaw and a butterfly hook and the butterfly. And that was just keeping me from getting hit. And of course, if I can sweep or do a move off of that, that's cool. But I just kept defaulting to that, and that would stop the punches. And I'm like, dude, I don't even drill this. Like, we don't even work on this. You know what I mean? Like, in class, I don't even work on that. We don't put the guy in butterfly and put the head there and work on not getting hit. But I was doing that, you know? So I'm like, now I'm going to start working on that more, because that was naturally something that worked that I did. But you have to analyze everything. You have to put the gloves on with mouthpiece and have multiple people to train with that will try to punch you. Because if you can give the white belt gloves, you can give the purple belt gloves, and you can give the black belt gloves, and it's going to be completely different, you know? So you have to kind of get used to somebody with knowledge of jiu-jitsu, knowledge of sweeps, knowledge of rubber guards, knowledge of, bump sweep to trying all these little jiu-jitsu things, but they also punch, you know what I mean? So that's the difference. If you go with somebody that doesn't know jiu-jitsu at all, and they're really like no balance style person, it don't matter if they punch. You're gonna jack them. If you're good at jiu-jitsu, you're gonna tap them in 10 seconds. Like I was at a dinner table once with Heaton, and he told me everybody's talking about how they would never pull guard in a fight on the street, and I was like, yeah, that's true. And then I remember Heaton was like, I'm like, what? And he's like, just depends on the situation. Look at our waiter. And everybody looked at the waiter, and it was just like a normal guy. He's like, man, if I'm out in the parking lot and this, and I need to, I can pull guard, and this guy will be in a triangle in 3 seconds. It's going to be over. I'll hook the leg. He's not going to slam me. And I'm like, he's so right. You know, he could end it anytime he wants. When you got a triangle like that. So, you have to think about punches. You have to think about fighting while you're rolling. I think that you could probably do a lot of moves that people think you can't in a fight, but you need to do it. You need to test it. You need to be like, bro, I'm going to try to berimbolo you without the gi on. You try to punch me. Here's some gloves. See if I can do it. When you feel me try to do the berimbolo, see if you can, like, tap me in the face or whatever move. Everybody says that move doesn't work in fighting. That's why I said that. But, like, scissor sweep positions, like knee shield, all that stuff. You should have somebody swing at your face a little bit. It'll completely change how you train, So yeah, if you don't, basically you got to do it,
Yeah. And it doesn't.
But also you got to have somebody that's there to help you learn, not just there to take your head off, because you got to get time in, without getting brain damage.
Yeah, that's the.
It's like if you rolled really hard with somebody on their first day, nobody does that. You know what I mean? And everybody helps the guy on their first day. And like, if you roll with somebody on their first day, you're like letting them push your knee down and you're talking them through it. You know what I mean? You're not just going 100 on them, So it's the same thing. You got to build your way up to it. But I believe that there's a majority of people out there right now that wear the gi, have a lot of gis in their closet, are very good at tying the belt 3 different ways. Look good in the gi, know a lot of sweeps, but don't ever train to fight. They just train to grapple against another jiu-jitsu grappler. You know what I'm saying? So it's like that will work if that's what the guy's trying to do to you. But if the guy's sole intention is to punch you, you should be, you want to get used to that. You know what I mean? And you still can do jiu-jitsu and submit them and sweep them and take their back, but you're just going to have to do it a little differently. You know what I mean? That's all.
Yeah. And you don't have to have obviously you need to be doing more of that if your goal is MMA, but a little bit of that knowledge and experience goes a long way versus none of it at all.
Yeah. And I would say the big scary thing is a street fight. When it actually happens, before it happens, moments before it happens, your heart's going to pump. You're going to second guess yourself. You're going to feel that nervous feeling. And I'm talking about a situation where the guy's scary. Not a guy with half your size is drunk. I'm talking about the guy is bigger. He looks tough. And he's strong looking, and he's mad, and you're going to have to do something. Like if you're practicing a certain kind of jiu-jitsu, you might be fooling yourself. So like I know it sounds crazy. People are going to say whatever, but there's people out there that don't train jiu-jitsu that are that strong and that intense and that willing to die. They can beat high-level jiu-jitsu guys in a real fight right now in the street. And if people don't, well, you're not doing jiu-jitsu right, I'm like, you haven't ran into that guy. Come out to Hawaii. I'll show you a couple of them. They're out there, and they don't even train. You see them out there. I don't go out to the clubs. I was about to say you'll see them at the club. I don't go out to the clubs, but you will see them out there. And you'll know exactly what I mean. They grew up fighting with their cousins, man, in the grass. And they didn't call it jiu-jitsu. They just called it fighting. You know what I mean? So those guys are out there, and that's who I think about when I go. When I go to the gym, I think about that. And when I go to a tournament, I just try to run through people. And I try to, if I run into somebody who's, has a certain game, I might analyze that if I know who I'm fighting. But you want to get good at, fighting. You know what I mean? And if grappling is your art and you don't like to punch people, you don't need to punch people, but you need to get good at fighting. And that means that the person might punch you. You see what I'm saying?
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
I get intense about that. Only because that's how my instructor is. You know what I mean? He's so intense about it that I've been groomed to think and talk and teach like that. You know, so people think, people are always thinking about the slaps and punches in my classes because we're constantly having those intense conversations.
Yeah. It doesn't take a whole lot more effort to analyze things from self-defense point of view than just the jiu-jitsu point of view. And the benefits could potentially be life-saving.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know what Luis is like? He's like, you shouldn't separate them. He tells me you shouldn't separate them. Like, let's say that you can have there's sweeps, right? Like the scissor sweep can work where nobody can hit me. And as they go to throw a punch, that would be the exact time that I execute the sweep. And my knee is extended to the point where they can't touch my face very well. So that move works in jiu-jitsu tournaments with the gi. That move works in no-gi tournaments where all submissions are legal. That move works in a street fight. And I'm not saying you have to just do one move, but I'm saying the sweeps that you choose, the guards that you choose, you only have a limited amount of hours in your life to work on these and to try to become a master. So you could work on 1,000 techniques. It's like the Bruce Lee thing, 10,000 kicks versus one kick 10,000 times, right? So you have a limited amount of time. You don't even know when you're going to die. You just know that you love jiu-jitsu. You want to do it for the rest of your life. So you have a limited amount of time to work on techniques. So no matter what you do, there'll be certain techniques that got more reps in than others, by the time you die. What techniques should those be? That's the question. I try to pick techniques that work in all facets, no-gi, gi, and MMA. You see what I'm saying? And then if I have time or a guy who's going to go against like Keenan or a guy I know is going to do worm guard, I'll just watch it, and then I'll have them spar with me, and I'll just try to emulate it. You know what I mean? So we'll work on that if a specific fight calls for it. But I'm not going to work on worm guard. Like when there's no fights coming up, and it's like, what should we all work on? Not going to be something like that. You know what I mean? It's only going to be that if I have to fight that guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I don't have enough time. And winning the gold medal isn't number one. Becoming more efficient at grappling, to fight, and all three of those aspects is most important to me. So I try to pick the sweeps that are going to work in a real fight. And instead of working on a new sweep, I do more reps on the sweep I know is going to work.
Yeah. Joel, we're talking about a few different specific things like that work for different avenues of grappling. You've got some DVDs. One of them is about the Falcon Guard. Another one is about the reverse triangle. Tell me a little bit about what's up with the Falcon Guard. What is that?
Okay, so Falcon Guard is like a grip that it's like, okay, you know how you have the person's head controlled with your right arm and their arm controlled with your left, like a stage one for the Gracies, punch block series.
So like an overhook like with my left arm?
Like an overhook and head control. Now The overhook, instead of it being free where it's just hooking, it goes so deep that your hand kind of grabs your bicep, so it's like a rear naked choke grip.
Okay, it's grabbing your own bicep, and then that hand is hanging on to the back of their neck. Yeah,
and it's making things tight, right? Now, that started out just to keep Kendall from punching me. So I didn't have a name for it. It was one of his camps where we had to fight a jiu-jitsu guy. I'm the one that's in. No, when we fight the jiu-jitsu guy, I'm in all the good positions. So we fought a guy, Alexander Shlemenko, who's going to try to knock him out. You know what I mean? So I kept putting Kendall in all the jiu-jitsu positions, you know, and me in the positions that we wanted the guy in, you know, which is all the sucky positions, like me on the bottom of mount, me on the bottom of side control, me on the bottom of the guard, you know what I mean? In my guard, him on top. And so he's working on hitting me, you know, and passing and punching and sparring from the guard. And one of the only things I could do with him was lock that up. And I eventually started grabbing my bicep, and I would hang on way longer. And then from there, I just started working on it and tying it into moves that I already know very well. Like if the opponent stands up, I just go into a butterfly sweep, but don't let go of the grip, you know, or overhead sweep. There's a couple of techniques on the YouTube. Anybody wants to go check it out for free can go check it out. And then I have the DVD has 14 techniques. It's really good for stopping somebody that is going to punch you and then using jiu-jitsu off of that. You can do it no gi as well, you know, but it's more for not stalling, but keeping yourself safe, you know. And if you had to stall, it's a good stall, you know.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit more about punches and safety, and then using the guard off of that, you know. The Falcon Guard. Why did I call it the Falcon Guard? I didn't even have a name for it. We were all just working on it. And then this super funny guy, kind of like a guy who, grew up in the 80s, that era. He was like, call it Falcon, dude. And everyone would laugh at it. We would laugh, be like, this guy in the 80s, we would make fun of him. And then eventually I was like, just started calling it that. So we knew because everybody knew what I was talking about. And then it just stuck.
That's cool.
The Falcon Guard is what it is. Yeah, I had a bunch of people, Falcon Guard this. I'm like, dude, I'm not trying to act like I invented the jiu-jitsu or I'm making up like a brand new revolutionary thing. But if I called it, grab the head with the right hand and overhook all the way till you got your bicep guard, it's going to sound silly, you know? So we ended up just going with the Falcon Guard. But yeah, how did it come about was trying to keep Kendall from punching me with his right hand.
So,
and then the other one, the other one is a move that I love, and I have hit successfully in some tournaments. I've gone around to a bunch of high-level schools and had to tested it on really high-level black belts. I'm not going to name names or anything, but like I've used that technique, the reverse triangle, specifically the one from the half guard. There's a bunch of techniques, but there's one where my right leg is in the half guard, and if you check that one out, that's a good one, you know, like, it's just like the one Braulio got famous for, but it's a bunch of, setups for it, you know?
So just to help everybody with visual again, I think everybody's familiar with the triangle. We're not talking about like you have a foot behind your knee. We're not talking about having the same arm and having your other foot behind the knee. We're talking about kind of, how would you describe the reverse triangle if somebody is having a hard time just,
well, I'm glad that you asked that, because I try not to get too specific, because technically I think what you're talking about is the reverse triangle.
Okay.
But I show setups in the DVD for that, for any version of the triangle that's not traditional, where you have the arm and the head are involved. So some people would call it like an inverted triangle. Some people might call it a backwards triangle. Some people might call it an upside down triangle. Some people might call it a reverse triangle. And I went through the names, you know, and I was like, inverted triangle of the world, reverse triangle of the world sounded coolest. But I like using the triangle in an unorthodox manner. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that was just cool to me. You know, I remember there was a DVD back in the day when I was a white belt called 101 Submissions.
Yeah.
And on that DVD, I forget who it was. I can't remember if it was Glover or somebody, but they switched from a regular triangle to the reverse triangle, and then they just pulled the guy's. It's also called a bolt lock. I think people call it a bolt lock. And then he just pulled the guy's head down and got him to tap. And I just remember thinking, holy shit, I always thought that was wrong. I was like, I didn't know you could do both. And then, so, you know, just kind of like working on it for a while. I eventually, you know, the one from the half guard I'm really, really good at. Like, I've really caught some high level people. You can go online and you can see some videos, some highlights and stuff. But like, it's a really good one, and all the other ones are good too. But I would say the half guard one is by far the best one, and it's best sneakiest setup. And so it's Bjjfanatics came to record my instructor's DVD, Luis, years ago before I did the Falcon Guard. I am on that DVD as the dummy, right? As the guy Luis is doing all the moves to. Those guys, and I kind of I help Luis teach the moves in there, right? Because I know him so well. We talk together, kind of like Heredia and Henner do when they teach stuff. So like, he was like, man, you talk good and you teach so well. Like, I wonder if you ever had an idea for a DVD, we would be down to do that. And I was like, for real, bro? So that's how I got that. You know what I mean? It's not because I won a championship or anything. I do have couple big matches, but like, where I have some good wins and stuff like that. But there's also some big losses. So like, it's not that I'm a special champion or something, but I think that my ability to teach and my obsession with jiu-jitsu is so big that people are interested.
Well, that's cool. And both those can be found at Bjjfanatics?
Yeah, bjjfanatics.com. Yep.
That's awesome, man, and appreciate you sharing. And so, like you mentioned it, there's stuff on YouTube that you can see, kind of get an idea of what it's about. And then if you want to dive a little deeper, the information is out there for you.
Yeah, I got a whole YouTube channel, and it's all just jiu-jitsu techniques and matches of mine and my, some of my partners and stuff like that. So Joel Bouhey YouTube and Joel Bouhey Instagram, and I do want you guys to go follow that, but you're going to get nothing but techniques. It's not like a bunch of pictures of food or something. It's like jiu-jitsu technique after technique. Every day I post techniques. So if you guys want to check those out, there's a bunch of free techniques on the Joel Bouhey YouTube and the Joel Bouhey Instagram. Cool.
I'll put links to those in the show notes. People can find you easy.
Cool, man.
Joel,
so what else, Byron?
Yeah.
What else?
I want to ask you just some general questions about jiu-jitsu, kind of help people out. And I realize you're kind of in an interesting spot where you have a lot of people coming in to visit your school that are on vacation. Let's take it from the other point of view. Let's say somebody's going on a trip and they want to train while they're away. They want to go to somewhere new and meet people and do jiu-jitsu. How do you do this well? What are some tips you have?
It's pretty simple. You just be polite and then, talk to the people. Like, I've never even heard of somebody going on vacation and going to a jiu-jitsu school and having like a bad time. I've never even heard that story. I've only experienced everybody being like, oh, right on, bro, you're on vacation. And, so I would say there's nothing to worry about. For the most part, every jiu-jitsu practitioner is humble, so they've already been tapped out a bunch and they've lost their ego and they're cool. And especially the instructor, go to the instructor, tell them where you're from, because they're going to want you to come back. You know what I mean? They're in the business of keeping you enrolled and keeping you coming back. So when people come to Maui and they train with me, I want to make sure that when they come back to Maui, they don't even want to try another school. They just want to train with me again because they had such a good time. You see what I'm saying? So I think most people are on that same tip, and there's nothing to worry about. But, as long as you're not going, the only thing you don't do is don't show up and try to win. Don't let that be your day. Don't go and try to beat everybody and like real hard and roll real hard and be like, who's the toughest guy? Don't do that. As you kind of get to know them on day number 2 or even later on in the day, you might be able to kind of roll harder with a specific person. But if you label yourself that guy who's trying to come in and like show everybody that they can beat you, you might piss somebody off. But for the most part, I think everybody's trying to stay healthy on vacation. So
yeah,
they usually come in with the mindset that they're going to go easy.
Yeah. So let's take that a little differently, because also you're dealing with athletes who a lot of times will have to, you have local stuff there and you don't have to really, make a big deal and travel for that. But when somebody is traveling and they're going to sit in a plane for a long time and they have to get a hotel and stuff, what are some tips you have for the competitive grappler who is going to go travel, and how do you adjust the traveling aspect versus performing well on the mats?
I would say that when you get off the plane and you get to the hotel, first of all, get a hotel that has a workout room. And when you get to the hotel, you go upstairs, you drop off the bags, and then you go right down to the workout room and you get a little workout in. Now, if you have to fight the next day, don't kill yourself. But if you're gonna acclimate, you're there for 3 days before you fight. Go in there and run on that machine or the treadmill or do something and break a really good sweat. Like we're kind of, go hard, break that sweat. And what that's going to do is it's going to kind of acclimate your body a little bit. So a lot of times when you travel and the time zones and with the stress and all the different people on the airplane, you can get sick, because you're breathing in all those different people on the airplane. As soon as I get off, I get to the hotel and I try to do some like running on the treadmill until I'm sweating super hard. Then I'll go up to the hotel room and chill. You know what I mean? There's that. And then there's also, making sure that you do get to the place a few days early, because like in Hawaii, the time zone's different. I feel it. If I go to the mainland to compete, I need to get in the zone of the time zone. Literally, I got to get in the time zone. So you want to acclimate correctly. If not, if you're not going to be able to get your body turned over, in 3 or 4 days, you got to map out like when is if you go to bed at 9 o'clock in Hawaii, when is that in LA? You know what I mean? You're going to have to figure out when is the exact time that you should go to bed based on where you were sleeping, prior to the event. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
at all?
that does make sense. And you got to consider those things, because it would probably be an easier tournament if you could just do it at your own gym, but that's not where the people are that you're going to compete with. So you've got to make some adjustments, and things might be a little off. And that's part of the traveling.
Yeah.
As you do it more and more often, you figure out your own system. But that's a good place to start. Yeah,
and another thing I'll say is become a cardio freak, and I don't mean like triathlon. Like you don't have to run. Like you can do jiu-jitsu cardio, but make the huffing and the puffing and you feeling tired a big part of your training. Like you need to feel that hardcore breathing on a consistent basis. And you can make yourself do that by just kind of almost hyperventilating a little while you train on purpose so that you bring up your heart rate. And instead of constantly breathing all smooth where you don't even breathe like loud at all and your heart rate's very calm, because you're not used to what you're going to feel like when you get pushed. You know what I mean? So I try to get my cardio on point, you know what I mean? And then if I get pushed and I get taken to that level where, it's frustrating, I know that I've worked on that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Steve Maxwell told me, like, you can get on the treadmill, which I'll share with you guys. This is a huge, huge trick to competing that Steve Maxwell told me, and I've done it. And I've only over the last, I haven't done it and then competed because it's a new piece of information. But every time I get on the treadmill, I do this now. And what it is you have to be careful, but you turn up the running a little bit and then hold your breath. And you don't need to hold your breath long. You can hold your breath for 15 seconds, 10 seconds, 5 seconds. So, and then you start breathing again. So I'm running at like 3.0 on the treadmill, and it's like a jog. And then I'll pump it up to 4.5, and I'll hold my breath for 15 seconds and then breathe normal for like, a chunk of time, and then hold my breath and then breathe normal. And every time I do that, it simulates the exact feeling of when you're going super hard and you start to feel tired in the match. It's the only thing I've found that simulates the same thing. And he says, whatever you do, don't do it swimming. You get drowned. The worst thing that's going to happen on the treadmill is you'll fall off the treadmill, man. You'll be okay. But he's like, don't start holding your breath for a minute or something, But I just do like 5 seconds while I'm running, and dude, it's crazy. You start to feel the blood and everything. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, if to do that, I think that's an interesting way to train, and it will develop different things in your body. But you are probably increasing slightly the risk of you having a fall in the treadmill. So make sure there's nothing behind where the treadmill is in case you do fall. Also,
Steve is kind of crazy. He is kind of a crazy old man. So I'm just telling you, that's what Steve Maxwell told me. And I've been trying it. Every time I do it, I'm like, man, if I fall off this thing.
Put a mat behind the treadmill there. You'll just fall. You'll do a break fall on the way down, and pop right back up.
That's right.
That's funny. But if you think about jiu-jitsu, there are definite times where your breathing is interrupted.
Yeah, and then when you make it a 5-minute match or a 10-minute match, and then there's points, that means if you let the guy pass the guard, you lose. You know what I mean? There's all these ways for you to lose other than the submission. If you want to win, you're going to stress unless you're winning. You know what I mean? So if you want to win and the guy passes your guard, you better figure this out or you lose. You know what I mean? You can't just chill like you can in rolling. You know what I mean? So, sometimes you just roll and you're like, he didn't tap me. No big deal. You can just chill, but when you have to win because you signed up for the match or whatever, that breathing, that huffing and puffing, that stress on your cardio, it comes into play more.
Yeah, that's good to think about. Joel, if you think about how jiu-jitsu has changed for you, what has been a fairly big change since getting your black belt? Maybe something that you think about jiu-jitsu, or maybe technique-wise. I don't know. Just like what has changed about you since you've gotten your black belt?
Well, I would say a lot. I mean, so many things, right? Like I had another kid. I had a DVD come out. I did a bunch of big tournaments that were, monumental. Big tournaments at the black belt level is huge, and you can't even do that until you're black belt.
Yeah.
So like I competed really high level at the brown belt, but when you get the black belt and you start hearing, you already know these names. Like, oh my God, I'm fighting Mike Fowler. I'm fighting Vitor Silverio. Like I got to do that, and to me, I was like, wow, like I feel like since I got the black belt, or it's not even since I got the black belt, since I started jiu-jitsu, all that huge chunk of time, like I made it to a high level, even sometimes I feel like I can just look at some of the names of people that I've fought. And I'm like, man, I can't believe I'm at a black belt level. You know what I mean? So just kind of the realization of, I'm on the same level as all these killers, that I've always admired. That kind of comes into play. And then at the same time, you realize you don't know shit. So like Luis says, everything starts over when you're a black belt. When I was a brown belt, I thought I had it all figured out. I got my black belt, started competing in the high levels, and then start feeling like, man, I got to work on shrimping again. I got to work on all this, stuff I thought I had figured out. So, there's a lot that's changed, in my mentality. Ego direction is a big thing, For somebody to say leave the ego at the door to an athlete who's been doing sports, trying to win, it's hard when it comes to the physical rolling, for them to really truly leave the ego at the door. Now, that doesn't mean that they're an asshole. That just means that they feel really bad if they lose. They're willing to fight their hardest to win. They don't give the guy an arm bar. They don't tap for free. You know what I mean? They really are competitive about it. It's hard, and I have this. Still do, always did. And I try to get rid of it, but the easiest thing to do is to redirect it. So I can have a role now where somebody is going 100%. And this could be another black belt going 100% to tap me. Doesn't matter what position. My goal is to only defend the submission and see how many times I can defend submissions. How many times can he throw up a submission at me to finish the fight and it doesn't work? Every time it doesn't work and he bails, my ego gets stroked a little bit. Now, it's very hard. Nobody does that. Everybody else feels like they're losing and their ego, they're feeling bad about themselves. As long as I escape, right? As long as I throw up the arm, he takes the bait, he goes for the arm bar, but I get out. It feels like I tapped him. The same. And I learned that from Hedron. It's okay to have an ego. It's not okay to be an asshole. You know what I mean? Like, you don't need to hurt people. You don't need to hurt people's feelings. You don't need to be the type of person that nobody wants to roll with because you're careless. You know what I mean? But there's nothing wrong with finding that other guy in the gym who wants to beat you and rolling with him hard. You don't want to get hurt. If you get hurt, you're not going to be able to do it again tomorrow. So there's a fine line. But going hard with technique and having that competitive nature is amazing. It's so good. You know what I mean? But sometimes you have to take that ego and redirect it. So it doesn't always have to be an offensive move that makes you feel good about your jiu-jitsu. If you rolled with somebody and your whole objective was to, work on your defense, they have to work on their offense a lot. Otherwise, not much is going to happen. And when I say offense, I mean fight finishing moves, submissions, not positions. So if you don't stick your arm up a little, they're not going to have as much time. They're not going to take the arm, right? Versus if I keep my arm tucked, they're never going to get it. If I stick it up, they'll have a chance. The more I stick it up, the more chances I have during the roll for them to tap me. Bringing them closer to the final fight finishing move, bringing me closer to the ability. Can I defend it when they get there? You know what I mean? Now I could prevent them from getting there by keeping my arms in tight, and they never even get an arm bar going at all. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about sticking my arm up like you're taught not to, allowing them to get a full arm bar on you, but before they stretch your arm out, you got the grip together. Now it's their job to undo the grip, stretch out your arm. But they can't, and you escape. If you have to tap, you have to tap. But I'm saying that's what I like to do certain days. And then other days, I try to dominate the whole time. I know one day will come where most of my days are going to be defense because I'll be older. And I'll still be going with young athletes. You know what I mean? So I will have to be defensive just because my speed won't be the same, my strength won't be the same, and I'll have to be on the defensive mode. So I prepare for that now. And I never did that as a brown belt, purple. I never did it willingly. I would only do it when, somebody mounted me and I can't get out. So it's like, okay, I gotta be here. You know what I mean? Now I go there on purpose.
Yeah, that's a great way to train. It gives your training partners something else to work on. It lets you work on your defense. You might try to escape 2 arm bars a week. If you train that way, you'll escape 30 a week, and you get to work on.
Yeah, but exactly, Byron. Exactly my point. If you train that way, you'll escape 30 a week, and that makes you more in tune with escaping the arm bar, whether the guy was going super hard on it or not. You know what I'm saying? Like, the guy who gets the more reps in that position is going to be more knowledgeable.
Yeah. I like part of what I think has helped me with that style of training, we call it ragdoll, is I'm more aware of, like, when it's too late to try to escape. Like, not when my arm's straight, but like, okay, I should have tried to escape a little harder 2 seconds ago because now the situation is quite a bit different than it was, and it helps me build, like, that like a alert system, like, okay, it's really bad now, or it's going to be bad in a second, so go now. And it helps, like, kind of fine tune, letting me know when I'm in trouble and when I'm still kind of safe. And you have to play in that area to understand it.
You got to play in that area. You have to be ready to tap. So, like, when you play that game, which, a lot of people will refer to it as, keeping it playful, right? When you play that game, you want the person that's attacking to attack for real, not gentle. You just need to be able to tap in time, and you'll never get hurt. So the recognition of what you're talking about, understanding I should have got, and now you got to tap, that has to happen. Otherwise, you need to go soft, or something can happen. I'm talking about grabbing the toughest guy and asking him to try and finish me, and you get a start on the back. And I don't want you to, like, go easy. I'll tap if I need to tap. I want you to go for the finish. Realize that I'm letting you have my back because I don't think you can finish me. You have to present that. That is keeping it playful. People think it means 2 people rolling around, like slow rolling, like warming up. Like that. I slow roll when I warm up sometimes, and we both just move around all nicely. That's amazing. That's a small part of keeping it playful. That has nothing to do with what people think Huron means, though. So I wanted to touch down on this just because I can explain it not better than him, but I can explain it well, So I want to go with the person who has the best arm bars in my gym and finishes everybody with the arm lock from mount. And then I want to slap hands with him when we roll. Don't tell him what's going on. He just thinks we're rolling. I secretly let him pass in a way that he thinks he did it. for real, but I let him. This way he's getting excited about his jiu-jitsu. His slickness, his timing is on point today. He just passed Joel's guard. And I don't put up a weak guard. I put up a good guard. During that part where he's trying really hard, I make an accidental mistake, which isn't an accident. He passes. He thinks he passed. Now his confidence is on an all-time high. Okay? I let him mount knowing that if I let him mount too obviously, he'll know something's up. So I put a struggle. I keep the frame. I keep the knee by the ribs, not letting him mount at first. As he tries to mount, he gets it. Okay? Now, I extend my arm a little tiny bit, knowing that he'll take it because everything else has been working for him. And that's the moment I escape. Could be any armbar escape You just know that he's going for it at that moment. So it could be get the elbow to the ground. It could be get the leg off the face. It could be the hitchhiker escape. It could be any armbar escape It's that timing. And that's what I need to get out of it in the real deal when I'm going for real 100% and I'm not giving the guy nothing and it's a fight for my life, or jiu-jitsu match for my life. Like I need that realistic feel from the best guy in the gym. Now, if I'm not ready to tap, this could be a big mistake training like this.
Yeah.
Because I'm giving him so much and I actually want him to take it. So I have to have the recognition that you were talking about and know, okay. And the ego is okay, man, because you let him start on your arm. And he's the best arm bar guy. So you shouldn't get bummed out if he tapped you. It wasn't even a real roll. You see what I'm saying? That's keeping it playful.
Yeah.
Not many people understand that. The people that Hedron's black belt understand that. I only see him, a couple times a year. But this is something that I can give the listeners, that they'll be able to train like that. Now, you can start off with people that aren't that good at the arm bar, and then you practice on them taking the bait when you stick your arm bar up, But as you go with a higher level person, they'll know that you're not just, what is it, that guy, what are you doing sticking your arm up? They know that you're giving them something. That they're not just going to take it. So there's an art to acting,
Man, that's awesome. Thank you so much for all the training advice and sharing some of your story with us today, Joel.
Thanks, Byron. Hey, man, I really appreciate you for giving me the opportunity to come on and introduce myself to everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. Check out check out Joel on social media. We'll put links to everything, and definitely swing by and check out some of those videos he's got on YouTube and Instagram. And if they look like something in your game, check out his DVDs as well. So thank you so much, Joel.
Yeah, and let me just say, anybody that wants to come out to Maui, Maui Jiu-Jitsu, we'll take care of you guys. We'll take you to the beach, all that stuff. Just, get the family together, go on vacation, come out here.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
All right, brother. Have a good one.
I want to thank Joel Bouhey for hopping on here and doing an interview. The Falcon Guard, if that's something that interests you, check out his stuff. And there's some free stuff on YouTube you can look at. And if you want to learn more, check out his DVD. It is an interesting guard. It has been... it's innovations from within a closed guard. There's something else we could do, and that's always kind of neat. And it has definitely thrown some of my teammates for a bit of a loop and let me do some stuff that get some angles and some situations that I wouldn't have been able to get otherwise. So it's been interesting for me to work on that myself. If you think this would be a good episode for a friend to listen to, we'd appreciate it if you send it your friend's way. And that's been a way that we've definitely been able to grow as a podcast. We've got teammates telling each other. We've got sometimes teammates, students telling their coach, hey, listen to this episode. And always honored for that. And sometimes we get coaches saying, hey, listen to the BJJ Brick podcast. This would be a good one for you to listen to. And that means a lot to us coming from a coach recommended to the students. That means that they're on the same page and they think that this is a valuable learning tool. So thank you so much for that. We did get to meet some of our listeners, at least the week that we're recording this. This will be aired a week or so later. But, man, it was great to meet Caleb and Lindy up there from St. Joseph BJJ, and Hank and Jared. We've met them several times coming up from Oklahoma, man. Awesome seeing you guys, and we'll look forward to seeing you guys in the future.
I was watching a match, and all of a sudden, how you're just standing there, and you kind of feel like somebody comes into your space. And I'm sitting there watching a match, and somebody comes on one side and somebody comes on the other, and they weren't totally next to me, so I couldn't see them. But I was like, man, these guys are standing awfully close to me, and they just kind of took away my angle. So I tried to move, and I look up, and it's Jared and Hank messing with me. So it was great to see Jared and Hank and meeting Lindy and Caleb for the first time. And, we really appreciate those people.
It was at the Fuji tournament here in Wichita, and we had a great time. It was a lot of good matches, and I got to see a lot of interesting styles of play, and a lot of our friends compete. So that was awesome.
Gary, I'll bet you meet a lot more of our listeners now that you got that BJJ brick neck tattoo, huh?
Yeah.
Definitely the neck tattoo. And, I really like your advice of, shaving side of my head and putting the tattoo on one side of my head. That has helped a lot too. So, I've met a lot of people, and it's kind of crazy. I get a lot of weird looks too. But the point is meeting people. That's all that counts.
Gary also put a tattoo on one of his cheeks. But he's got to be wearing the right shorts for you to be able to see it. He's all inked up now.
I don't think that's ink.
Well, I don't know what it is then, Gary. But we just kind of mentioned that we were here at a tournament here locally. Gary and I are in Wichita, Kansas. Be great if you are in the area. If you live here and you haven't trained with us, we'd love to get some mat time with you. If you're traveling through and haven't trained with us, or even if you have, hit us up, and we'd be happy to get some mat time with any of our listeners. bjjbrick@gmail.com is the easy way, or messaging us on our Facebook page is another easy way to get a hold of us to connect and train. Joe, where are they going to find you, my friend?
Man, I'm just south of Houston, so I've got to think we've got some listeners in the Houston area. If you live in Houston, train in Houston, go through Houston, get in touch with me through the podcast, and love to get some mat time with you. If you can't make it down to my school in Lake Jackson, and you're traveling through Houston, I can definitely suggest some places for you to train in the Houston area. So get in touch with us.
Guys, we've got a great article here this week. I found it, and I was happy about it, and I like the message that it brings out. It's how to measure success in a jiu-jitsu competition. It's on teampasos.com. That team is affiliate under Atos, so that's nice, and they are located in Virginia. We'll put a link to the article in case I'm saying the name of the team incorrectly. We'll put a link to the article in the show notes. Check it out. It's worth reading. But I think the easy way, or the common way to say, hey, was this a successful tournament, is how did you do? And that's not necessarily an accurate way to look at things. Like, did I get a gold? No. Did you get a silver? No. Well, did you get a medal at all? Maybe not. But you could still have a successful experience regardless of the outcome of your actual performance. There's a lot of other things happening here. The article talks about, did you have a lot of gains in your training? So were you able to kind of amp up your training, maybe fine-tune your game a little bit? And today, let's just say you started training in January and the tournament was in March. Like, you started training for the tournament in January and the tournament was in March. In that time, in those 3 months, you probably gained a lot more than you would have if you didn't have that tournament goal set on the table there in front of you. And that's one, they say this was successful in that I'm ahead of where I would have been if I didn't have this goal of a tournament. And that's an interesting way to look at it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I want to skip down to sort of the middle part of his article, though, and I think the author is sort of a kindred spirit of ours, guys, because he says at the end of the day, the more substantial question is, have you inspired others and even yourself through your vision, hard work, and dedication leading up to the tournament? And I've got to tell you that the schools that I've trained at, the schools I currently train at, when there's a tournament coming up and we get a handful of guys that are working hard to compete in that tournament, man, it just brings the whole school up. It really does inspire everybody else. And the best 2 or 3 months of training that you're going to see in maybe a 6 or 10 month period is when the school's getting geared up for a tournament. And you got some guys that are, maybe a guy, it's his first tournament and he's working really hard to get his game together. Maybe you got a guy that's been out of shape for a little bit and he's working really hard to get in shape. These kind of things inspire the whole team. And you may not say at the end of the day that this was a huge success for me, but if you inspired the school to get better and you've lifted your team up, that's a big success.
Yeah, I really like it. He talks about the team. He talks about the team flag is symbolically raised. And Joe, it takes me back to a post you made on Facebook one time that it just made me think so much about your school. And this was your other school in and not that your school in Texas is great, but I remember you were training with your guys down at LaRose Martial Arts, and I remember they were all getting ready for a tournament, and you made a post about you came in and you thought that you were holding them back, your game wasn't there that day or whatever. But I just remember like everybody in that training session all just popped onto Facebook and like, Joe, thank you so much for coming. We needed another person. You really helped us out. And even though you may have felt down that day or maybe not had a lot of energy, you probably worked hard that day and, it might not have just been your day. We always have that. But it was cool because all your teammates, they just raised each other up. I just remember reading it and you talked about inspiration and I was inspired just from reading that. And I just remember thinking in my head, that would be a school that would be fun to train at. Those guys care about their teammates. Those guys, inspire each other. They lift each other up. And, that's what Tony is saying in this article. I really like that part about, the team flag is symbolically raised.
Yeah, shout out to those guys down on the bayou for sure. Jiu-Jitsu is interesting in that it's one of the most individual sports and it's one of the biggest team sports at the same time. It really is an interesting mix of the two aspects of competing.
Yep. And, Tony in this article talks about all the stuff that goes on behind the scenes. We talk to teammates, but the blood, sweat, and tears leading up to it. And like you said, you're out there on the mat by yourself with your instructor, not yelling at you, but yelling your encouragement and telling you what to do. But you're out there, but when you get your hand raised, it's the blood, sweat, and tears of everybody in that gym that has helped you get to that point.
Absolutely. Just thinking of this past week at this Fuji tournament that we went to, success. And it's easy just to look at, how did I do? Did I win or did I lose? And mark that as a success or a fail. But there's so much other thing. Did you, like the big concept, did you learn more training for this than you would have otherwise? Did you work extra hard? Did you lose a little bit of weight? Are you in better shape than you would have been otherwise? Those are all great things. How about during the tournament? Did you get to hang out with your team the day and watch your team compete and root and cheer them on? Maybe even help them out a little bit as they were out there competing and doing their best. And I think you have to look at the whole experience versus the minutes that you're on the mat. Look at the whole day and think of, hey, I got to meet some really cool people today. Like, that's outstanding. Regardless of how the matches went, you got to meet a couple new coaches or you reconnected with some friends. That's like Gary and I here in Wichita. Half the time we're at the tournament, we're talking with somebody we haven't seen in more than 6 months or a year, old jiu-jitsu buddies. And that is so much fun to go and talk. So I get a lot of enjoyment. Neither one of us competed, but I got a lot of enjoyment out of watching the matches, helping a few people do a little bit better. And probably the most fun was talking to people I haven't seen for a little while, or even meeting somebody new. So there's a lot going on, and I think it's important to not hang your head too high or too low based on how the matches went. If you're able to try to perform your game, that's fantastic. Whether your game works or not against the person, that's sometimes outside of your control. If you've got a fantastic spider guard, that's your game. You put someone in spider guard and they slice right through it. Well, you got some work to do in your spider guard, but that was your plan, and somebody had an answer for it. So no stress on you. Your plan didn't work. Go back to the drawing boards and work a little bit more. And maybe have a counter for what they're doing, or maybe have a way to recover that guard or something. But just to have, I think we get into the problem of judging your success on the results and not by any lessons learned or by any growth that has been made. And this is a great article to talk about that.
There's a big problem with judging your success based on your the medal that you have at the end of the competition. I hate to tell you this, but some of you all that have won gold sometime in the last 6 months, you won it just by dumb luck. I mean, sometimes you just get a good draw. Sometimes the best guy in your bracket gets injured. I mean, sometimes just dumb luck. And sometimes when you lose, it's the same. You just got a tough draw right out of the bat. You got the guy, the first draw that was the toughest guy you could get up against. You were nervous. So, yeah, the results, that's a horrible way to judge your success in a tournament for sure.
Yeah, I was proud of one of the guys that I was helping out here today, one of my training partners. And, he stepped up to the advanced division, first time ever he's done that. And, he went 1-2, won 1, lost 2, ended up finishing second place. And, I was worried because he has done really well in tournaments. He's won intermediate tournaments and beginner tournaments. And I was worried how he was going to react to a loss. He lost his first one, won his second, lost the third one. But just, what really was refreshing is he was so happy. And he was talking about what he had learned. He left that with more confidence than he did coming in. And I thought that was great. He's like, hey, I know I belong. The two matches he lost were really close. And, it's just like Byron said, that the guy was better that day. And, but he was so excited. He has more confidence. And what I really liked is he actually said, the cool thing is I got stuff to work on. And I just thought that was an awesome way to go, and, he, even though he lost a match or two, he won. He's got a game plan. He realized he can compete at that level, and man, he was all smiles. It was neat to see.
That's how you could lose a match and win at life. I mean, that growth attitude is how he's going to be successful with anything he tries.
Yeah, and we talk about jiu-jitsu on the mat and off the mat. And the crazy thing is he's a guy I work with. He hasn't been training that long, about 3 years. But he just got promoted, to big-time position at work. And, that's his second or third promotion since I've known him for 3 years. And you can see what he does at jiu-jitsu with that mindset has helped him out in real life there, too. So, when you have that mindset, the sky's the limit.
So we'll put a link to this article in the show notes. Go check it out, and I do know that it's frustrating if you don't do well at a tournament, but don't put all your eggs in the basket of winning and losing, whether you have a good time or not. There's still a lot to go out there and learn and have a good time. Hopefully you do well, but just do your best, and that's part of the fun of doing a tournament. You don't know how it's going to go. I'd like to give a quick shout out to some of our Patreon members, Michael, Christopher, and Caleb, who we just met finally this weekend. So thank you guys for your continued support on Patreon. No new Patreon supporters this week, but we definitely appreciate your guys' continued support.
When I was talking to Caleb, he was one of the guys who got the picture of me. And I just started laughing. When you guys pulled that joke on me and started sending out pictures of me, as I was embarrassed. And now I've actually met somebody who got one. That was a good one, guys.
Yeah, and he's still listening.
He still listens. So. And
yeah,
he what he told us? He's I think he used to be a bricklayer.
yeah. He said he's a bricklayer, and he said he was like Googling BJJ and saw something about bricks, and he's like, "Man, this is a perfect combination for me."
It was meant to be.
Awesome.
But thank you, Caleb. And your wife for the support there. I guess, it really, when somebody does that, it's kind of a household decision. So Lindy also supports us. Yeah. So
I really figured everybody would drop their support as soon as they got the picture of me.
Drop something else, Gary. Oh, man.
And it's not defensive.
Real quick, I want to give a mention of what Patreon is. It's a website that helps people who make content like podcasts. So if you want to support us, go to the link on Patreon that's on the show notes or on our website, and I'll tell you more about it. Basically, we'll mail you a 5-inch BJJ Brick gi patch and a sticker, and you're invited to join our private Facebook group. If you have Facebook, send me a message. Let me know that you're on the Patreon support team and you like to join the private group. Occasionally we'll pop up with some questions for you guys and just get some input. That's always fun. And Caleb got one of the pictures of Gary. That was kind of a temporary deal. autograph picture of Gary. That was man,
Hopefully
perfect time,
out.
Caleb. I know the guy. I could have him sign some more. But that's I think that those are out at the moment. So, but yeah, we appreciate all the Patreon supporters so much, man. You guys have really made a huge difference in the show. Check us out on our social media channels. We've mentioned our Facebook page. Joe's really very active on there. I'm trying to do some live videos occasionally. If you send us a question, I might just answer it live as I stutter through my thoughts on Facebook. Also, YouTube channel has quite a bit of things, including product reviews. And we have an app. Why have you not downloaded the app yet when it's in the App Store and it's free? Probably the reason would be you have a podcast listening app already that has all your podcasts. If you don't have one of those apps and you're listening to us on the website, like Gary doesn't do, but he would do if he had to, Gary, you could download the BJJ Break app, download the episodes on your phone, and listen to the episodes while you mow the lawn, or rake the leaves, or trim the hedges of many fine villages. Hey, my friends, this is Byron coming at you from the audio editing room. Just told a joke about pruning the hedges of many small villages, and it fell flat because evidently these gentlemen have not seen the movie The Three Amigos. Go see the movie. I'll play a little clip. Here we have the main bad guy, El Guapo, going down the list of his guys, talking about memories that they have together. He gets to Chevy Chase, who doesn't belong. He's in disguise. And Chevy Chase fails to make up good stories that they have done together. So that's where that came from. Here's a little clip, and we'll keep on rolling.
Carlos! We fought together the priests of this mission. Pedro! We crushed the federales in the plains of Oaxaca. Pedro! Jose! Together we burned the village! And raped the horses! And we rode off on the women! And we plundered! And pruned the hedges of many small villages. Who the hell are you? Another one of the damn gringos! Take this monkey away! Put him with the other Yankee! What is happening around here today? Are gringos falling from the sky? Yes, El Guapo. Now we have all the amigos. Take him away!
Gary, you could download the BJJ Break app, download the episodes on your phone, and listen to the episodes while you mow the lawn, or rake the leaves, or trim the hedges of many fine villages. Just throwing it out there,
That
Gary.
was awkward.
Well, I'm good at awkwardness, and I'm also pretty good at exchanging pleasantries, guys. It's been a great time this week.
Oh, definitely. It's been a great time.
So this is
More fun than barrel monkeys.
This is the first episode of the week here, but because it's the first week of the month, Joe, what do we have coming up in a few days?
Yeah, we have Jeff Westfald from Rising Phoenix Martial Arts. He's a black belt in Jiu-Jitsu. He holds multiple black belts in other traditional martial arts as well. And he has an interesting podcast, The Martial Brain. So I had a fun time interviewing him, and I look forward to dropping the episode in a week.
Awesome. And it's our extra episode, so we have 2 episodes coming up at you this week. So, guys, I've had a lot of fun. Stay sweaty, my friends.
And don't forget to shower.
Train hard, train smart, get better, guys. We'll see you on the mats.
Thank you for listening. I hope you find the time today to roll. After all, the best way to get better at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.